gentlemen, we're beginning our descent towards Amsterdam Schiphol
You'll have
Airport.
to turn that off, Vanessa. Thank you.
Forced to make an emergency landing.
Now a series of breakdowns.
It was terrifying. It was a horror movie scene.
Criminal conspiracy to defraud the FAA. This is a criminal cover-up.
Every Boeing crash landing explained, starting with a crash in New Orleans. TACA Flight 110, 1988, Boeing 737-300. Rain hammered the windshield like bullets. Lightning strobed across the cockpit as Flight 110 descended toward New Orleans. At 16,000 feet, both CFM56 engines began to cough. And then, silence. The sudden stillness was deafening. Captain Carlos Giordano, a former war pilot who had already lost an eye in combat, now faced the unthinkable, a twin-engine flame out in a commercial jet mid-storm. With no thrust and electrical power dropping fast, Giordano guided the powerless Boeing 737 through violent rain and turbulence. The crew scoured the ground for a flat stretch. No runway, no highway, just swamp. Then Giordano spotted a narrow grass levee near NASA's Micoud facility. "Hold on," he warned. The plane touched down perfectly, skidding to a stop without breaking apart. No one was hurt. Investigators later found hail and heavy water ingestion had killed both engines, prompting new certification rules for future jetliners. Among pilots, it became known as the perfect emergency landing. United Airlines Flight 232, 1989, DC-10. A loud bang shattered the calm at 37,000 feet. United Airlines Flight 232 was halfway between Denver and Chicago when its tail-mounted engine exploded, sending shards of titanium spinning like shrapnel through the fuselage. Within seconds, all three hydraulic systems were severed. Every control surface, ailerons, rudder, elevators went dead. The DC-10, once a marvel of engineering, was now an uncontrollable glider with 296 souls aboard. Captain Al Haynes, First Officer Bill Records, and training check, Airman Denny Fitch faced the impossible. They could only steer the aircraft using throttle adjustments on the two remaining engines. One wrong move, and the jet would roll into a fatal spin. What followed was perhaps the most extraordinary display of crew resource management in aviation history. For 44 minutes, the team worked in perfect sync, improvising a thrust-only control method never taught in any simulator. They aimed for Sioux City, Iowa, knowing they had only one shot. The DC-10 slammed into the runway in a violent cartwheel of fire and metal. Miraculously, 184 people survived. LOT Polish Airlines Flight 16, 2011, Boeing 767-300ER. Warsaw's skies were gray that November afternoon when LOT Polish Airlines Flight 16 approached from Newark. As the Boeing 767 began its descent, the crew received a terrifying alert. The landing gear wouldn't deploy. Multiple attempts failed. Hydraulic and electrical systems seemed fine, but the gear mechanism was jammed solid. For over an hour, Captain Tadeusz Rona circled Warsaw, burning fuel while engineers on the ground scrambled for solutions. Passengers were told to brace for impact. Fire trucks lined the runway, foam sprayed across the tarmac. Then, with nothing left to try, Rona brought the jet in. The aircraft touched down perfectly on its belly, sparks showering across the runway, sliding straight and smooth until it stopped dead. Not a single person was hurt. Rona's calm precision turned what could have been tragedy into national pride. He was hailed as the Polish Sully. British Airways Flight 38, 2008, Boeing 777-200ER. It was a crisp January morning when British Airways Flight 38 from Beijing began its final approach to London Heathrow. Everything looked normal, autopilot stable, glide path perfect. But as the aircraft descended below 1,000 feet, both Rolls-Royce Trent 800 engines refused to deliver power. The thrust levers moved, yet the engines stayed idle. Captain Peter Burkill and First Officer John Coward instantly realized they wouldn't make the runway. With only seconds left, they pulled the nose up, trying to stretch the glide. The Boeing 777 clipped a perimeter fence, skidded across the grass, and came to rest just short of the runway threshold. Miraculously, there were no fatalities. Investigators discovered a hidden culprit. Ice crystals in the fuel had blocked oil heat exchangers, starving the engines. The finding triggered a worldwide redesign of fuel systems for twin-engine long-haul jets. Asiana Airlines Flight 214. 2013, Boeing 777-200ER. The sun was shining over San Francisco Bay when Asiana Airlines Flight 214 lined up for landing. The Boeing 777 was on a visual approach. No autoland, no glide slope guidance. Inside the cockpit, 3 pilots, 2 in training, relied heavily on automation. But as the jet descended, something was terribly wrong. They were too low, too slow, and no one noticed until it was far too late. At just 500 feet, alarms screamed. The throttles were jammed and idle. The pilots had assumed the auto throttle was maintaining speed. Captain Lee Kang-kuk, still inexperienced with manual landings in the 777, pulled back in panic. Seconds later, the tail struck the seawall. The rear fuselage snapped off, scattering debris across the runway. 3 passengers died. Over 180 were injured. The NTSB called it a case of automation complacency, a chilling example of how advanced technology can erode basic flying instincts. And then came the Netherlands, where everything went wrong. Turkish Airlines Flight 1951. 2009, Boeing 737-800. The morning was misty over Amsterdam when Turkish Airlines Flight 1951 approached Schiphol Airport. Everything appeared routine until the aircraft suddenly began to lose speed. The auto throttle had quietly pulled back the power to idle, and no one in the cockpit noticed until the stall warning blared. The cause? A faulty radio altimeter on the captain's side, which falsely told the system the plane was just 8 feet above the ground, when it was actually still hundreds of feet up. Believing it was about to land, the computer reduced thrust to 0. By the time the crew realized, it was too late. The Boeing 737 dropped hard into a muddy field just short of the runway, breaking into 3 pieces. 9 people were killed, including all 3 pilots. Yet 126 others survived thanks to the aircraft's low-speed impact. The tragedy led to new procedures worldwide for cross-checking altimeter readings and re-evaluating how pilots monitor automation during approach. Ethiopian Airlines Flight 961. 1996, Boeing 767-200ER. Somewhere over the Indian Ocean, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 961 turned from a routine flight into a hostage nightmare. 3 hijackers stormed the cockpit, demanding to be flown to Australia, completely ignoring Captain Lual Abate's desperate explanations that the Boeing 767 didn't have enough fuel. The pilots were trapped, fight back, and risk the passengers, comply, and face fuel exhaustion. After hours of flying on fumes, both engines died. The hijackers were still arguing when the aircraft began gliding silently toward the turquoise waters near the Comoros Islands. With no power and minimal control, Abate aimed for a controlled ditching, a feat never before successfully done with a jet this large. Seconds before impact, one hijacker wrestled for control, throwing off the angle. The right wing struck first, tearing the plane apart in a violent explosion of spray and debris. 125 of the 175 people aboard survived, an astonishing number given the chaos. China Airlines Flight 605. 1993, Boeing 747-400. Typhoon Ira was lashing Hong Kong when China Airlines Flight 605 made its approach to the old Kai Tak Airport, a runway notorious for its hairpin turn over the harbor. Winds were gusting above 35 knots. Despite the storm, Captain U.T. Ching decided to attempt the landing. As the 747-400 crossed the threshold, a powerful gust lifted the massive jet, then slammed it down hard. The aircraft floated, touched down too late, and began hydroplaning. The captain deployed full reverse thrust, but the giant bird refused to stop. The Boeing roared off the runway, plunged into the bay, and came to rest with its nose in the water. Amazingly, everyone survived. Investigators blamed pilot misjudgment and weather pressure, reinforcing stricter go-around policies in severe winds. Southwest Airlines Flight 345. 2013, Boeing 737-700. It was supposed to be an ordinary summer evening arrival at New York's LaGuardia Airport. Southwest Airlines Flight 345 was moments from touchdown when the aircraft's nose gear slammed the runway first, a fatal error in any landing sequence. Within seconds, the landing gear collapsed, sending the Boeing 737 skidding in a shower of sparks and smoke down the tarmac. Passengers screamed as overhead bins burst open, but the crew kept control. When the jet finally stopped, the cabin was eerily quiet. No fire, no deaths, only injuries and shock. Investigators later found the captain had pushed the nose down prematurely, causing the gear to snap under impact. It was a sobering reminder even small deviations from procedure can have dramatic results. Air Niugini Flight 73. 2018, Boeing 737-800. Torrential rain hammered the island of Chuuk in Micronesia as Air Niugini Flight 73 lined up for its final approach. Visibility was poor, the runway barely visible through sheets of gray. But the descent continued, too low, too fast. In the final seconds, the aircraft's altitude warnings blared, yet the crew pressed on, believing they were still on profile. Then came the shock, a sudden splash. The Boeing 737 had landed in the lagoon, more than 450 meters short of the runway. Water surged through the cabin as crew and passengers scrambled for exits. Nearby fishermen raced in their boats to help. Miraculously, 34 of the 35 on board survived, rescued from the sinking jet. The event was captured on video, a haunting testament to aviation's fine margins between control and catastrophe. From miracles to tragedies, every landing you've seen here pushed human limits to the edge. Which one hit you the hardest, and why? Share your thoughts below.